So, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining today's session. I'm Sean Gibb. I'm the Events and Marketing Manager at Pro Manchester, and I'm delighted to welcome you to Hybrid Working, Prioritising Your Wellbeing and Self-Compassion, hosted by Impact Consulting Psychologists. Following today's session, I'll send out a post-event email which will contain any post-event collateral from today's session, any links to where you can find out about more information on this topic and about other Pro Manchester events. And it'll also contain our feedback form. If you could take 2 minutes to fill this in, it would be really appreciated. Just a few points of housekeeping. Please be aware that this webinar is being recorded. Feel free to use the chat function to ask any questions, make any comments, observations. Please keep your microphones on mute for the time being, just so we can ensure the best audio quality, but there will be opportunities to speak at some point. And without further ado, I will hand you over to Maria Maniva, business psychologist at Impact Consulting Psychologists.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks. And hello, everyone. I want to officially welcome you to our webinar today, Hybrid Working, Time to Prioritize Wellbeing and Self-Compassion. And again, thank you for coming today, and we hope you find today's session useful. And just to do a quick introduction, my name is Maria Muniva. I'm here with my colleague, Ro. We are business psychologists at Impact Psychology for Business, which is a Manchester-based consultancy which specializes in performance, talent, change, and leadership. And when it comes to me and my experience, I have a master's degree in organizational psychology, and my background is in HR as an advisor in social care. And Ro, if you want to introduce yourself as well.
Thank you, Maria. Good morning, everyone. As Sean said, I hope not everyone is quite sore from yesterday's football game. I feel a bit tired because I live in the city center, and you can imagine there's been quite a lot of noise yesterday, actually, evening. So my name is Fasoura. I'm like Maria, I'm a business psychologist, and I've been working for Impact for the past 2.5 years. Again, a similar background to Maria, so I finished my master's in organizational psychology at the University of Manchester, and my background is in HR and sports management.
Thanks, Ro. Thank you. So why are we here today? Today's webinar has the objectives of to explore the concept of liminal thinking, discover the post-COVID hybrid working trends, identify the effect of hybrid working on well-being, and consider the importance of self-compassion. However, before we do that, we want to just quickly check how we're all feeling today. And on the screen, you can see all those beautiful suns, and each sun actually represents a current state of being. So you can see that 1 is, excited and ready to embrace the day. 3 is relaxed and at ease with everything. 4 is worried about what's coming up next. So in a second, we're going to launch a poll with Sean's help, and we just want you to tell us which sun are you today. Maybe some of you are feeling, like Rose said, a bit tired after the football last night. So we just want to see how everyone is feeling today. So Sean, if you can just launch the poll.
Yep, no worries.
Thank you. And the poll, just to say again, is completely anonymous as well. So quite a few of us are feeling excited. I think we can just give it another second maybe, and then end the poll.
I've noticed that Anissa just joined us as well. Just to fill you in, we are doing a quick checkup of how everyone is feeling. And I'm not sure if you can see the poll. Oh, connecting to sound. Yeah.
Oh, it's just still connecting.
I'm talking to the void. Hi, Anissa. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Hi. Just to fill you in, we are just doing a quick checkup of how everyone is feeling, especially after yesterday's football game. I'm not sure if you can quite see the poll because you just joined the session. If you can't, just can you type in the chat which sun you are feeling today?
Okay, sure.
Okay, I think we can end the poll, and if we can just show the results. So I think a lot of us are, 31% are saying that we feel excited and ready to embrace the day. Again, some of us do feel exhausted by the day-to-day grind, which is normal. So it's good to see that a lot of us are feeling, positive and excited, and that is great because usually we are more receptive when operating from a positive space, and we want to keep today's session very positive, very optimistic, so we hope that we can develop that even further. So now I'm going to hand over to Ro, who will explain to us the concept of liminal time.
Thank you, Maria. So a lot has happened in the past year and a half, and we are still going through a period of change. So we are currently going through what we call liminal time. So we are kind of in between the old normal and the next thing. Think of it as being in an airport lounge, which sounds like an example from a previous life by now. Potentially, you may have had a chance to fly somewhere, but think of it as if you were in the lounge and you're not home, but you're not at your destination either. So it is a period of transition. And during this liminal time, it's perfectly normal to feel that we somehow have lost control of what we recognize as our own normality. So let's explore the current situation through the lenses of liminal time, a concept created by Dave Gray. So this is a moment in time. And the line is the time. So this is the past and this is the future. So this is now, right now, whilst you are attending this session. And I want to talk about change. So hybrid working that we are going to explore in a minute represents change. So the reason of thinking about the present moment is that you can't actually change the past, and the future doesn't exist yet. And the only place that change is really possible is the moment, it is now. So if you want to create great change in your life, that time is now. And why is that important? So there is one thing that we all do, and that is the autopilot. So autopilot is what you do when you go through your day and you are going through your habits, routines, and emotions. So for example, some of us have a habit of opening our emails every time we receive a notification. So this is our autopilot. It's something that we do and we can't stop doing. The point I'm trying to make here is that if you want to create change in your life, you cannot be in autopilot, because when in autopilot, you cannot be in the moment. So you worry about the past, you think perhaps, what could I have done differently? And you may also worry about what will happen with the future. So the way to create change actually is quite simple. So we need to turn off our autopilot. So if you say to yourself, I'm going to be present at work, but doing so in a different way, then you have to pay attention because you don't know the way. So going back to the email notification example, what would happen if we deactivated notifications and only looked at our emails on dedicated time slots throughout the day? Might we be able to concentrate more on our task at hand? Will the universe destroy because we haven't opened that one email? So that brings you back in the moment, actually. And I know this can be scary at times because you might be thinking, oh, what if I miss an email that's quite important, for example? So however, we find that change happens in a positive way when we let go. And it is less likely to happen when we are holding on to control. So by using liminal thinking, we can start accepting that we are not in control of what happens next. What you are in control, though, is focusing on the present time, the moment now, and turning off your autopilot. So COVID has changed how we work. So it's up to us to how effectively we respond to that change. And a big thing that has changed now is how we work. And today we will be focusing on the hybrid model. Thank you, Maria. So chances are that if you are attending this webinar, hybrid working is already part of your routine or might be in the near future. Can you check in the group who has already embraced the hybrid model? Use either reactions or a physical hand. Yeah, Donovan, Fab. Yeah. Anyone else? You can type in the chat as well. I know Sean for sure is going to the office at the moment. For example, me and Maria haven't actually been in the office since November, so it's quite a long time. And we are not expected to go back until September. Yeah, Donovan 3223. Yeah, okay. Oh, that's good. So hybrid working is part of the change we just mentioned. And in the past year and a half, we went from what used to be the traditional way of working, i.e. working from the office 5 days a week, to working from home. Something we all had to do due to the lockdowns, unless you were a key worker, for example. And now we are being given the choice, hopefully, because some employers are not embracing that much flexibility at the moment, but we are given the choice of where to work from. But COVID has shown us that there is no need to tie work to a fixed location to ensure the productivity of teams and delivery of outcomes. So, however, we also have learned that there are certain aspects of work that are far better performed in the same location at the same time with other colleagues. For example, complex collaboration work, team building, and relationship building. However, hybrid working is more than just about location. It represents a massive shift in the culture and mindset of both organization and employees. So just to give you a bit the stats behind hybrid working at the moment, and most of our data is from the CAPD, which is the recognized body of HR professionals in the UK. 53% of the organizations in the UK have, since the beginning of the pandemic, taken on a hybrid working. And this percentage is likely to grow further, as recent research suggests that as many as 76% of UK employers are considering offering hybrid working as a job perk in order to attract new talent. Other reasons that are also reported are maintaining health and safety precautions with social distancing and so on and so forth. So you can't actually have all of the people in the same office at the same time. Cost savings, you can imagine that an office in the city of Manchester, for example, might be quite costly. So employers might be looking to reduce that cost, and then greater productivity, actually. But let's look at the other side too. So while employers may consider hybrid working as a new perk of the job, almost all employees, 90% in that study, see it as a necessity. So 60% of employees in the study stated they would be willing to quit their job if their employer did not demonstrate greater flexibility in relation to when and where they work post-pandemic. Please don't share this in the chat, but think for a moment. What would you do if your employer would not allow you this kind of flexibility, i.e. working in a hybrid way? So what the statistics show us is that people want the hybrid model, and it is here to stay. But what we don't consider as much as we should is how hybrid working might be affecting our well-being. Maria, if I can ask you. Yeah, thank you. So like I mentioned earlier, we're currently in liminal time. So we are experiencing it like we are in between things. So not quite there, not quite in the past. So back in 2019, we would have never considered that in 2 years' time, i.e. today, we would not need to be in the office to be able to do our job. And because this is such a new concept to the majority of organizations in the UK, we don't really know that much yet in terms of how hybrid working affects our well-being in the long term. Although there have been some studies about remote working, hybrid working is still we are still exploring it. So what we are seeing so far is that hybrid working may support improved well-being through reducing commuting time, providing employees with more autonomy around their schedules and extra time for health and well-being activities. It may, however, also bring with it specific challenges around work-life balance and managing the boundaries between work and home. And sometimes you might be experiencing what we call in slang FOMO, so fear of missing out. So what are colleagues in the office discussing whilst you're working from home? We should not forget that we all respond differently, and some of us feel good about being back in the office a few days a week, seeing our colleagues again and getting back to somewhat of a routine. Others, however, might feel anxious about leaving their home, which is in the past year and a half has been their safe space. I'm just seeing a comment from Paul as well. Is it the new discrimination, i.e. there are those that can and those that cannot, usually lower paid or essential worker roles? Paul, I will ask, Paul, would you like to just explore this with me for a second? If you can unmute yourself. Hi, Paul. Oh. Hello. Oh. I'm sorry, Paul, but we can't actually hear you unless
Hi,
I'm having
is that better?
Oh, hi. Yeah, it is. Yeah. Oh, we've lost you again.
Hello?
Hello.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Would you like to explain a
apologies.
bit more about what you just mentioned in the chat?
Yeah, so I used to work for a huge global organization where they're an office based, the head office is in Trafford Park, and there's office based workers who ultimately are able to take up this option of hybrid working. Working in operations, I had people who worked on the shop floor, and we worked in logistics, so we had to keep, we were essential workers, so we had to keep the world turning, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So the people who were doing that at the front end, they felt that the impact of the COVID was going to be unbalanced, because they were not able to do the things that the office workers were seen as an advantage to allow them to work from home, work remotely, work more flexibly, whereas they continue to do what they do. They also were exposed more. You mentioned about travel. So there's been a lot of chat recently about the restrictions being removed. And these workers are going to be on public transport, which is going to be, they are greater, they're more likely to be exposed to a greater level than those that are working from home. So automatically you can see lots of things stacking up, which ultimately mean this gives advantages to those people in these roles compared to those who are not. And will it create a new discrimination? Will we be looking at ways and means of rewarding these individuals in a different way? Or are we going to change the way we work flexibly, not just in an office environment, but across the board?
Yeah, you're quite right, Paul, because people working, for example, in retail as well, they don't have the choice. They have to be in the office or the store or whatever that is, day in, day out. So you're quite right. And organizations have to, is what we would call organizational justice, and how an employee sort of perceives that people within the business, not just the retail department, let's call it, or operational department, are being treated in the organization. And it is a tricky space for organizations to be. Unfortunately, we won't explore that bit in this workshop, because we are talking it through the employee perspective and how you can sort of social compassion to yourself whilst being in a period of change. But you're quite right. These are some serious recommendations, because in a year's time, when we have established some sort of new normality, people are going to feel discriminated against. Oh, I can hear a doggy. Are going to feel potentially discriminated against if let's say other colleagues are working from home and they have to use public transport to go to work, and now with the new rules that you won't have to wear a mask in public transport. So it is a gray area, certainly, and there are way too many complications and stuff. Thank you very much for your input. So what we need to appreciate here is that we might be feeling quite okay about returning to the office. We might feel okay staying at home, but we need to appreciate what it is like for others and look after each other as we embark on this journey together. So we need to have compassion for each other and look after each other's well-being. But what we should also not forget is to look after ourselves. So you need to be in a position to take care of yourself in order to provide quality care to others, whether that be your colleagues or family members or friends even. Maria, if I can ask you, thank you. So to look after ourselves, we need to have self-compassion. So self-compassion is the ability to turn understanding, acceptance, and love inward. So many people are able to extend compassion toward others, but find it difficult to extend the same compassion towards themselves. So self-compassion involves acting the same way towards yourself as you would to a friend, for example, when you're having a difficult time, a fail, or notice something that you don't like about yourself. Instead of ignoring your pain with a stiff upper lip mentality, you stop and tell yourself, this is really difficult right now. How can I comfort and care for myself in this difficult moment? So it's about shifting that inner critic mentality, which Maria will talk about in a second, to being kind and understanding when confronted with personal failings. After all, who said that we have to be perfect all the time? I know I'm not. I try to be. So I would suggest looking into the work of Christine Neff if you are really interested in the concept of self-compassion. She's done some really good research in this field. And I want to hear from you for a second. Why do you think self-compassion is so important, especially at this time we are in? If you can add in the chat. So for example, in the line of work that me and Maria are involved, because we do quite a bit of one-to-ones, I feel that if I don't sort of decompress myself, so I started doing some yoga recently, but I feel that if I don't sort of dedicate that time to myself, I'm not quite able the next day to comfort and doing one-to-ones if I'm not operating from a good space. And Paul said, if you're not looking after yourself, how can you look after others? Yeah, exactly my point, Paul. Anyone else would like to share in the chat? Claire, thank you. It's good for your confidence and self-esteem. Absolutely. And in terms of the activities that you choose to sort of enhance that self-compassion, they might actually enhance your confidence too. Because putting ourselves under unnecessary pressure is detrimental to our well-being. Exactly right. And be present rather than non-present. Stephen, thank you. Yeah. And thinking about demands and resources at work, often we are focused so much on the demands, such as long working hours, unhelpful colleagues, or whatever that might be. But what are our resources? Resources help us cope and be resilient. And self-compassion is actually one of our resources. So with hybrid working, we have to accept that our experience and perceptions, even if different from those of our colleagues, are not necessarily bad or wrong. If being back in the office is making you feel a bit anxious when anyone else around us seems quite happy and joyful, and they seem to be enjoying the opportunity to socialize and interact with others, that does not invalidate your feelings. So you should accept and appreciate how you feel and not engage in negative self-talk. something that we are going to be touching on in a few seconds. And I'm just going to hand over to my colleague Maria.
Thanks, Ra, thanks. So let me just quickly change the slide. So now we explore why it's important to not just to have compassion, not just for other people, but also for ourselves. And now we're going to do a practical exercise. So we're going to use breakout rooms, and I want to encourage you to, turn your cameras on because you will be working in groups. So we're going to split you into groups of 3. And I encourage you to have just a good discussion around self-compassion and to come up as a group with your top 3 to 5 tips for self-compassion. So what can someone do to be more self-compassionate? You will be in the breakout rooms for 10 minutes. And I also want to remind you to keep your conversations confidential. So, let just this be a safe space for everyone to share their thoughts and feelings. And again, it's going to be 10 minutes, and we want 3 to 5 top tips for self-compassion. Do you have any questions before we open the breakout rooms? Can't see anything in the chat. So if you do have any problems in the breakout rooms, you can always ask for help, and Sean will be able to intervene. So Sean, if you can just open the breakout rooms for us. We hope you had a good conversation, so we want to hear from you. So if you can just add your top tips in the chat, just to share them with everyone else in the group. And we can obviously, read out some of them. Also, apologies if you can hear children, but I do live opposite a primary school, so you might be able to hear some children playing in the background. So if you can just add your top tips in the chat. Natalie, speak to yourself like you would speak to a friend. Setting time aside, making it part of your routine. Mindfulness, yoga exercise. Reflection time, writing things down. That's great. We're actually going to touch upon some of those in a few minutes. Have a phone call instead of a video call. Regular check-ins with colleagues and friends. It's interesting that they have a phone call instead of a video call. Again, it just depends on the person, because for some people it does create a bit of anxiety to, have to get ready for a video call, make yourself look presentable. Where for other people, they prefer to be able to see the people. So again, it's, it is what Ro mentioned, that different people have different perceptions and they, different feelings as well. I can see setting boundaries is quite important, yes. Keeping an appreciation log and accepting that it's not okay to be okay. That it's okay, sorry, not to be okay. Reflecting on what you're grateful for each day. Yeah, gratitude is a big concept of mindfulness, which we're going to talk about in a second, but these are all great. Exercise, physical activity, again, affects mental well-being. So it's always, it's always recommended that even through the lockdowns and everything, we just stay active and we exercise regularly. So these were all great, and please keep adding things to the chat because obviously we can learn from each other. Reflecting on 3 things that went well each day, that's great. Be your own best friend. So again, just keep adding things to the chat. But again, these are all great tips. So now let's see what research also recommends. And who is familiar with the term imposter syndrome? So this is when you do not recognize or appreciate your own level of competence. And it's the persistent belief that you aren't really as talented, clever, and brilliant as you appear to others, and that one day your mask will slip and reveal a fraud. And that's why imposter syndrome is also known as perceived fraudulence. And unfortunately, that's something quite common and something that a lot of us can relate to. And research actually shows that around 80% of people will experience imposter syndrome at some point of their life. So some of the thoughts and feelings associated with imposter syndrome are the feelings of being a fake. So that drives a person to give answers they think that other people want to hear, instead of, showing that independent thinking. And when you tell people what they want to hear, it actually makes the imposter syndrome even stronger, because it makes you feel like a fraud again. Another feeling is that it's all down to luck. So there's a tendency to attribute success to luck or other external sources. So you might think like, well, I only did this because, it was just pure luck that I managed to do that. Which kind of links to, the fact that we perceive success as no big deal. And that's the tendency to downplay success. And again, attribute the success to the fact that maybe the task was easy, or you got help or support from others. So if you achieve something at work, you might feel like, oh, I only did it because my colleague helped me. And one of the last feelings associated with imposter syndrome I'm going to mention today is, the feeling of I must not fail. So there can be a huge amount of pressure with imposter syndrome not to fail, so that others can't discover you as a fraud. And paradoxically then, success also becomes an issue, because it brings added pressure and visibility. And that altogether leads to an inability to enjoy success. So all of this pattern of thinking and feeling can actually lead to negative self-talk. And negative self-talk comes from our inner critic. And when we think about how to develop and practice self-compassion, the first and probably most important thing we need to do is make peace with or silence our inner critic. And we can actually do this by practicing what we call self-kindness. And self-kindness is about showing kindness and understanding towards ourselves, even when we fail at something or we are hurt. And rather than being critical or judging ourselves harshly when we are in pain, we can recognize the negative influence of self-judgment and treat ourselves with warmth and patience instead. So we can do this either through our behaviors or thoughts. It's about avoiding that negative self-talk. And to practice self-kindness, you can start by consciously exercising self-acceptance. And this means embracing your own perceived shortcomings as well as your character strengths, and fully accepting how you may feel without letting that inner critic take over. Another self-compassion exercise is to treat yourself as you would treat a friend, which was one of the recommendations we saw in the chat as well. So how would you treat those that you care about? It's natural for us to be kind to the people that we care about in our lives. And we let them know that it's okay to fail. We're only human. We reassure them of our respect and support when they're going through difficult time. We comfort them when they're, when they're feeling bad about themselves. So in other words, most of us, do this for others. Most of us are understanding and compassionate about others. So the question is, why don't we feel the same way about ourselves? So if a friend feels anxious about going back to the office, we'll never say, oh, it's stupid to feel that way. So why would we have this critical and negative self-talk to ourselves? So you should talk to yourself as you would talk to a friend. Your inner voice should play the role of a supportive friend rather than a critic. And you can even use endearing terms such as, darling or sweetheart when you talk to yourself, because actually research has shown that those endearing terms are linked to self-compassion. And of course, you don't need to go overboard with endearing terms if it feels odd, but it's just a suggestion. And interestingly enough, physical contact also matters. So if a friend is feeling down or upset, we can physically pat them on the back or hold their hand. And Kristen Neff, who Ron mentioned earlier, she actually describes these ways of tapping into our own caregiving system to release oxytocin, which has been found to have cardiovascular benefits. So try to find, like a physical soothing technique that works for you. So maybe next time when you're feeling overwhelmed or maybe worried, anxious, or you're in a difficult meeting, just do the simple gesture of placing one hand on your other forearm. And that way you can activate that caregiving system. And of course, we can't talk about self-compassion without mentioning mindfulness. And Ron knows that I love the concept of mindfulness. So of course I had to talk about it today. So when we're self-compassionate, we're aware of our own hurtful thoughts and emotions without blowing up their significance through rumination. So mindfulness is seen as a process of awareness for the present moment, an exploration of emotions and feelings without judgment. So we acknowledge and label our thoughts as opposed to react to them. And although mindfulness as a concept was only introduced in the Western world in the 1970s, so not that long ago, there already been quite a research showing that practicing mindfulness actually is beneficial to both our physical and mental health. And for example, MRI scans of the gray matter of the brain's hippocampus, and hippocampus is the area of the brain actually associated with learning, memory, compassion, and self-awareness. So those MRI scans have shown an increase of gray matter in the hippocampus in participants of mindfulness programs. And our inner critic has often been around for a very long time. So practicing mindfulness can be an important self-compassion exercise. And this is also known as mindfulness meditation or mindfulness training. And nowadays, there are so many apps that you can download on your phone, which have a variety of different guided meditations, and usually have different categories that you can choose from as well. So you have meditations that you can do while you're commuting to work, on your way to work, or maybe guided meditations you can do when you're feeling a bit anxious or worried. And I would highly recommend that if you don't already have one of those apps on your phone, to maybe download 2 or 3 and see which one works best for you. My personal favorite is the app called Calm, just as a recommendation. And some organizations also introduce mindfulness programs at work. And if yours, again, is one of them, I would highly recommend that you take part. And those mindfulness-based interventions can be in the form maybe of an 8-week course, such as a mindfulness-based stress intervention, or maybe, just doing a 1-hour guided meditation every Friday morning. And organizations are increasingly recognizing the benefits of using mindfulness at work, and especially with COVID and everything that we're going through at the moment. So more and more is becoming available through work. And altogether, being more mindful and doing regular meditations can actually, like I said, help us become more self-compassionate. So now that we looked at different ways that you can build your self-compassion, and we wanted to make this webinar as useful and practical as possible and just give you that practical advice on how to do it, we want to hear from you. So what is your takeaway message from today? What is the one thing you're going to do differently after this webinar? And again, if you can just share your thoughts in the chat with us. Thank you, Paul. I can see you have to leave, but thank you so much for coming today. And we're glad you found the session useful. If you can just share your takeaway messages with us in the chat. Again, I'm sorry if you can hear children playing in the background. Claire is saying it's interesting to hear from different people and their experiences. And that's why we always try to, use breakout rooms when we do webinars and workshops, just because it's that interaction that helps you learn from each other. To give myself encouragement when I make mistakes. Yeah, it's all about, silencing the inner critic and actually, showing support to yourself and just acknowledging that it's okay to feel that way. Try not to compare myself to others, be more compassionate to myself. Yes. And again, hybrid working, we are currently going through a period of change. and different people perceive change in different ways. And it's important to just be self-compassionate and say, well, it's okay, you know, I'm okay, it's okay to feel that way. Taking the time to listen and talk about all this helps acceptance and implementation, yes. So we hope that, you know, you've got some like practical advice that you can use, because again, it's, you know, we don't really know how hybrid working is gonna work. Like Paul mentioned, you know, earlier today, with obviously some people not actually being able or being kind of a discrimination. We're, you know, in a year's time, we are going to have a clear idea of whether hybrid working is going to work long term. Claire, this has been very interesting. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for your contributions as well. And just before we go, we also want to tell you a bit about how impact can help as well. So as a business psychology consultancy, we have years of experience providing support to clients and helping them support their teams as well. And we have been working tirelessly throughout the pandemic, and of course have adapted our approach as well. And we now deliver both face-to-face and virtual workshops. So we have our own hybrid model as well. And our workshops are tailored to the needs of the client, but some of the previous work that we've done focused on building resilience, moral purpose and compassion, handling challenging conversations, dealing with and sustaining change, and developing emotional intelligence. And on the next slide, I'll just share our contact details. So you can follow us on social media. You have our email addresses, the website, our contact number. So again, if you found this webinar interesting and you would like to discuss anything further, you know, discuss how we can help you, just feel free to get in contact. And I want to, again, thank you all for coming today. Thank you for your participation. And Ro, if you want to just say something as well.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And I hope you find the day useful. What I was thinking is, I'm not sure if everyone has access to the chat, but I thought that it might be helpful if we could just download the chat and, of course, anonymize any comments and send you your top tips. Yeah. Would people find that helpful? Yeah, can see some nodding. Thank you, Natalie.
I can see Natalie, yeah, is giving us a thumbs up.
Yeah, okay. Good.
That's great.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you again for coming.
Thank you, Sean, as well for
yes, thank you, Sean,
for creating the polls and helping us with the breakouts.
No, not at all. Thank you very, very much, Ro and Maria, for all your hard work on this and putting on such a great session. And thank you to all of you who've attended and engaged. Really look forward to welcoming you to the next session. I'll get the post-event email out a bit later this morning.
Oh, thank you, Donovan.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks,
thank
everyone.
You, yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, Natalie.
Bye.
Have a lovely rest of the day.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks,
Bye,
Claire.
Claire.